Good day, everyone. First of all, my sincere apologies because I could not tell the story yesterday. My Wi Fi went for a toss and I got it back sometime around midday. But there's no point in telling a horror story or a spooky story midday, right? So I waited till the night, and it is about 8 o'clock in the night here in India, and I am about to begin. So, the story I've got for you today is, as I had announced in the earlier video, Graveyard Shift by Stephen King from the short story collection Night Shift. And before I proceed any further, if you have a phobia of rats, close this video immediately. I cannot stress this enough. Now, without further ado, and lack of a Halloween costume, here we go. Stephen King, The Graveyard Shift. So the story is set in a mill where we have our protagonist, Hall, and the foreman of the mill is called Warwick. And this mill is an old place, and Hall works the night shift. And one day, Warwick comes up to supervise, and it's like 3 a.m. in the night. So um, Hall is like, "What is this bugger doing here?" He's supposed to be in his office churning coffee and listening to the radio. Why is he here? What does he want? Which is typical reaction of somebody who's just having a smoke and trying to relax a bit because he's a bit bored because there's no work. So Warwick is like, "Hey, you went to college, right? So you're a college boy, and what you do in college, boy?" So he's like, "Well, you see, there's no work right now because I haven't got any feed from the upper levels. So, you know, I'm just having a smoke." And he's like, "Why is there a soft drink can in your hand, college boy?" So Hall is like, "Oh, well, you see the rats around here. I sometimes throw used soft drink cans at them because it's kind of fun." And right on cue, there appears this rat. So Warwick is like, "There's one. Get the bastard." So Hall throws the can, and it hits the rat, and the rat disappears with a frightened squeak. So then Warwick is like, "Good shot," and he's like, "Listen, next up it's 4th of July week, so that means that the mill will be closed from Monday through Saturday, and we are gonna be working on the basement level. There's a lot of filth down there. We're gonna take hoses and we're gonna clean that shit up. Would you like to work? It's extra pay." Now here's the thing: the policy of the mill is that those people with tenure get that week off, and those people who don't have tenure, by tenure I mean who haven't worked for a year, do not. So Hall accepts the offer and shows up on Monday, and he starts working. Now there are 60 incandescent light bulbs strung up in the basement, and they give out a very sulfurous yellow glow. And even despite that, there are shadows here and there. It's scary in there, and so there's rotting furniture. There's a river flowing nearby, and some of the damp has set into the walls. There are mushrooms, toadstools rather, growing from the floor, and there are a buttload of rats. And these rats, they're not scared. You see, you can't just bung a soft drink can at them and expect them to run away. These rats, no, no, no. These rats, they just don't care who you are, and they're big. These rats are big, and some of them can even squat on their hind legs. So the work begins, and the first day goes over. And there is one more character in this story who gets introduced now. He's a Polish dude called Wiskonski. Now, Wiskonski sticks to Hall and he keeps saying that this is no work for a man, this is no work for a man. And Hall is a bit tired of his whining. Now, things pick up the next day. They're having a smoke, and one of the men says that uh, a guy called Ray got bit on the arm by one of these rats, like somewhere over here. So, Warwick took a look at the wound, but the more important thing is this rat was not letting go. This rat had just sunk his teeth in deep into the arm, and one of the other men had to take a metal tray and bash it on the arm, like bash it and ow! Okay. So bash it on the arm, and after the third or fourth bash, uh, the rat let go. And once the rat let go, Ray stamped at it until it was just a mass of, blood and fur. And then Warwick put some antiseptic on it, put a bandage around it, and sent Ray home and told him to go to the doctor and get a tetanus shot. And the rats kept getting bolder and bolder as the work progressed. And ultimately, they had to get industrial sized hoses to hose the place up because it was really dirty, man. I mean, there were rotting furniture, there was rat eaten paper, and all of that. There was a general stink of mold. Very, 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 forgive my language, fucked up conditions. So, and Wisconsin was continuously maintaining his litany that this was no work for a man. And so the work progressed a couple of more days, and then the second incident happened. This guy called Carmichael, he got bit on the chest somewhere over here. And once again, now this rat, he clung on harder and he tore off a strip of the shirt. And with his hind legs, he was scratching the belly. He was scratching the belly. All right. And well, Carmichael had a deep wound, and he was like, "I want compensation for this. I'm not an exterminator. What sort of nonsense is this?" And Warwick looked at him, and he's like, "Oh, you got bit on the chest. So like, what you're saying is that you're a sissy." And so this is a very good way to make enemies among men who are already disgruntled at your service of and your treatment of them. So everybody was at this point of time antagonized. Carmichael went home. The rat in question got a hose to the face and crashed against the wall. So now I'm going to tell you something about these hoses. Hall was holding the hoses and he was observing the hoses. So like the aperture of the hose, the mouth of the hose was pretty wide, and the amount of force with which the water would eject out, well, it was like being hit by a bullet. So if a man were to be hit by this hose, he would definitely develop a fracture. That is the amount of force with which the water was being hit. Now this is important. Bear this in mind. The next day, the next day, Warwick again pulls some shit. So, Hall is like furious. And Hall has been doing some reading. And surprisingly, there are no rats that day. But a bat shows up. A giant bat. He just flutters down from somewhere and scares the shit out of all these people because it's dark, it's stinking, they're working at night on a holiday week, and on top of that, a big fat bat shows up. I mean, what the hell? Okay, so the men get the men want to leave. They're like, I don't want any more of this. And Warwick is being a grade A asshole. He's like, You punch out now, I'll make sure you never punch in again. And then they discover that there's a sub level because Hall notices that there's a trapdoor in the floor. And he says that you're gonna need like 20 exterminators, well trained exterminators, to take out the rats because there's a sub level over here, and in that sub level, these rats are breeding. And Warwick is like, "Oh, you're so smart, college boy. Tell you what, get down there with the hose and clean it out because let me tell you something, ain't nobody gonna pay for that shit." And that is when Hall plays his trump card. So, like I told you, Hall has been doing some reading and he has got a trump. He has got some information. There is a statuette in the town hall that if there are vermin like skunks, rats, especially rats, unlicensed dogs, etc., in a building, that building has to be given pest control, vermin control, exterminators, or else an injunction will be slapped on it and it will be decommissioned. So he tells Warwick this, and Warwick's got a twisted grin on his face when he hears this. He's like, okay, so take Wisconsin, take yourself, get down there and clear the basement out. And Hall is like, no problem. And this time, Hall has got a strange look on his face. He's like, no problem, but you're coming with us. And Wisconsin immediately says, why did you get me into this? So Wisconsin is a big ass coward. So Wisconsin is like, why did you get me into this? I mean, what's wrong with you? And Hall is like, well, it wasn't me, it was him. That's why I'm taking him. And Warwick's really cocky at this point. He's like, you know what? I'll come with you, college boy. Hey, Sai, get upstairs, get us 3 of those flashlights, give him the hose, and let's go. So the flashlights arrive and they go down there. They open the trapdoor and they go down there, down the stairs. And it's pitch black. Even the torches, they cast very little illumination. And they're going and they're going and they're going and hear they can't hear too much, but there is a scuffling of feet, and suddenly Wisconski's starts screaming because there's something moving over his shoe. And when they point the light down there, what do they see but a rat that's about 3 feet long? I'm not even kidding you right now, 3 feet long, scuttering up his leg. So Wisconsin jumps out of his skin and makes a run for the door. And Warwick is scared now. He's like, we've got to go back. But Hall says no. And he's got that weird look on his face again. And he says, no, 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 nobody's going back. We are going forward. And so they go on walking bit by bit by bit. And the rats, they have snuck up on them. These monstrosities with 3 feet size and all that. They're all around them. They're surrounded by rats. All right, there are rats everywhere, and Warwick is scared, but he's not showing it. He's keeping on saying, "College boy." He says once, "College boy, let's go back." He says it once again, and Hall grabs him by the neck and says, "No, onward," and shoves him. And when Warwick turns around, Hall just points the hose at him. But this hose is long, right? And we all know that rats like to nibble, and so they've got to the hose. And Warwick says, "You're fucking crazy, man. If if the hose gives out, we are both dead men." And Hall says, "I know. Keep going." And then they see a different breed of rat. They see rats without hind legs. scuttering around on a skeleton that is also decomposed. It's got mold in its skull. There's one ulna. There's a little bit of rib cage, and on the skeleton are these blind grey rats which don't have hind legs and have appendages coming out like half-formed wings. And Warwick starts screaming, and these rats attack him. And Hall looks up and he sees what Stephen King has called the Queen. Now, the Queen is a giant thing with wings and no hind legs, a mutant monstrosity, something from hell itself. Alright, something from hell itself. And it descends on Hall, who is by this time running like a madman. And the story fades to black with Hall screaming. That was The Graveyard Shift by Stephen King from the book Night Shift, a collection of short stories. I had intended to tell the story on Halloween night, but I couldn't. But here it is. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope I delivered it well enough. I wanted to do my best. My sincere apologies again for not being able to do this on Halloween. And I will see you next week with another story. Till then, stay safe and vigilant. We are going to beat this pandemic. We will win through. This is the Bilge Master, signing off.